Single dad bought a deserted farmhouse, came back weeks later and found 2 women living inside. The gravel hissed under the tires as Daniel Hayes turned onto the long dirt road. Evening light stretched over the Montana fields, painting everything purple and gold. His back ached from 5 hours of driving, but none of that mattered now. This was supposed to be the start of their new life. Daddy, is that it? Is that our house? Emma's voice came from the passenger seat, bright and hopeful. Daniel smiled, tired but trying. Yeah, sweetheart. That's... He stopped. Smoke. Thin gray smoke rose from the chimney of the farmhouse he had bought 6 weeks ago. His chest tightened. He slowed the truck until it rolled to a stop about 20 feet from the porch. The house looked the same as when he'd first seen it. Peeling white paint, sagging steps, weeds thick around the posts, but someone was inside. Why'd we stop? Emma asked. Stay in the truck, honey. Just for a minute, okay? He squeezed her small hand before stepping out. Cold evening air hit his face. The smell of wood smoke drifted from the chimney. His mind raced through possibilities, squatters, vandals, kids. The front door hung slightly open. He pushed it. The hinges groaned. The room was swept clean. A fire crackled in the old stone fireplace he'd thought was dead. 2 young women stood frozen by the hearth. They looked alike. Same pale hair, same frightened faces, dirt on their cheeks. Please, one said quickly, hands half raised. Don't call the police. We'll leave right now. Who are you? Daniel's voice came out hard, though his pulse jumped with nerves. We thought it was abandoned, the other said. We didn't mean to break in. We've only been here a few weeks. We'll pack and go. Daniel looked around. The floor was swept, broken windows patched with plastic. The fire burned steady and safe. Someone had cared enough to make the place livable. How'd you even find this place? He asked. The first twin folded her arms, shivering. We grew up near Pine Creek. Everyone knows this house. We didn't know anybody bought it. From the doorway came a small voice. Daddy? Emma stood clutching her stuffed rabbit, curls wild around her face. I told you to stay in the truck, he said gently. It's cold, she said, and I saw the smoke. I thought maybe we could have a fire too. She tilted her head, studying the women. Are they going to live with us? Nobody answered. The younger woman shook her head. No, honey. We're leaving. We'll be gone in 10 minutes. But Emma had already stepped closer to the fire, reaching out her hands. It's nice in here, she said softly. Way better than the truck. Daddy, can they show us how they made the fire? You said ours was broken. Daniel looked at her, then at the 2 women. They weren't dangerous, just scared. The same kind of scared he'd seen in his own mirror for months. Sit down, he said quietly. They hesitated. Please, let's just figure this out. 20 minutes later, they were sitting around the fire. Emma leaned against Daniel, half asleep. The 2 sisters sat across from him on a wooden crate, ready to run at any moment. I'm Lila, the first one said softly. This is my sister June. Daniel, he said. And that's Emma. Tell me how you ended up here. The sisters glanced at each other, some silent communication passing between them. We're from Pine Creek, June said finally. Just us and our mom. Dad left when we were kids. Mom worked 2 jobs most of our lives. We both got scholarships. Business for me, environmental science for Lila. We graduated last year. Things were good until Mom got hurt. Lila picked up the story. A machine accident at the plant. She lived, but her spine was damaged. She couldn't work anymore. Insurance fought the claim. Bills started to pile up. Daniel adjusted Emma, who was drifting into sleep, listening anyway. We moved home to take care of her, June said. Thought it'd be temporary. But the company blamed her for the accident. Medical bills just kept coming. We worked 3 jobs between us, but it wasn't enough. She died in October. Infection. The fire popped. I'm sorry, Daniel said quietly. Lila wiped her eyes. Debt collectors took everything. The house, the car. We tried to fight it, but had no lawyer. By December, we were living in our car. Someone at the diner told us this old farmhouse was empty. We thought it'd be safe for a few weeks. Daniel nodded. Their story was too familiar. Different details, same collapse. How long have you been here? He asked. 3 weeks, Lila said. We cleaned up, fixed the fireplace, patched windows. We tried not to cause trouble. That was your work on the windows? June nodded. Found plastic sheets in the barn. Keeps out the cold. You cleaned the chimney too? Yeah, Lila said. I checked the flue in the brickwork. It's safe. You know construction? He asked. Not really, she said. But I learn fast. Built sets for theater in school. Fixed farm fences. Daniel thought for a long moment. It was probably insane. But then, so was buying a broken farmhouse with his last $15,000. This place needs everything, he said slowly. Roof, plumbing, wiring. I can't do it alone. I used to run a contracting business before I lost everything. If you help me rebuild, you can stay. I can't pay much, but you'll have heat, food, a bed. We'll figure out chores and space. You learn some skills. Emma gets company besides me. They stared at him. You're serious? June asked. I am, he said. But there are rules. We're honest. We pull our weight. We make this work together. Lila's eyes filled. Why would you do that? You don't know us. Daniel looked at the little girl asleep against him. Because 6 months ago I would have given anything for someone to give me a chance. June turned away, shoulders shaking. Lila whispered, Thank you. Get some sleep, Daniel said. Tomorrow we start. We're not afraid of work, Lila said. Good, he answered. Neither am I. Daniel had forgotten what it felt like to fix something from scratch with almost nothing. The first week was madness, wires too old, boards too rotten, tools too few. But he kept going. Lila followed him everywhere, always asking, always learning. Why use the thicker wire? She asked, crouched beside him. This one carries more load, he said. Better safe than sorry. She nodded, memorizing it, then handed him the next tool before he even asked. June worked quietly at the table, making lists of supplies and costs. There's a salvage yard in town, she said. If I talk them down, we can get lumber for half. Daniel smiled. You've got a talent for stretching miracles, she shrugged. Numbers I can handle. Life, not so much. Emma claimed herself as the boss. She'd sit on an old paint bucket, legs swinging. Daddy, that board's crooked. It's supposed to be, sweetheart. That's how the water runs off. She tilted her head. Still looks crooked, the twins laughed. Daniel couldn't help it either. Every night they gathered around the fire. Soup, bread, tea, sometimes just whatever June could make stretch. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm. It was home. 2 weeks later, Daniel came downstairs to the sound of Emma's chatter. June was cooking while Emma sat on the counter. Lila let me use the real hammer, Emma said proudly. I nailed 3 nails. 3? June said in mock awe. You're practically a pro, Emma grinned. Do you think Mommy would be proud of me? The question made the room still. Daniel froze in the doorway. June didn't miss a beat. I think she'd be proud of you every single day, she said softly. You've been so brave. Emma looked thoughtful. I miss her. I know. I miss my mom too. She died too, right? June nodded. She did. Does it get easier? It gets different, June said. You don't miss them less. It just hurts less sometimes. That night when Emma was asleep, Daniel found June sitting on the porch wrapped in a blanket. The air was cold, full of stars. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For what you told her. I never know what to say. You don't have to say the perfect thing, she said. You just have to be there. You've kept her safe. That's enough. She misses her mom. I can't be both parents. You don't have to be both. Just her dad. That's already everything. They sat in silence. Daniel finally said, Tell me about your mom. So she did. How Carla Miller had raised 2 girls alone. How she worked 2 jobs and still made them feel loved. How proud she'd been when they both got scholarships. She'd hate knowing we ended up like this, June said. She'd think we failed her. You didn't fail her, Daniel said. You tried to save her. That's not failure. That's love. After a moment, June asked, What was your wife like? Daniel smiled faintly. Melissa? She was the planner. I'd rush into everything. She'd pull me back and make sure we had a plan. She laughed all the time, even at her own terrible jokes. She loved Emma so much it scared her sometimes. She'd say, What if something happens to her? How would I live? I used to tell her nothing would happen. He went quiet. Turns out I should have been the one worrying. You couldn't have stopped it, June said softly. Doesn't stop me from feeling like I should have. That's just grief talking, she said. It makes us think we had control we never did. He looked at her. How'd you get so wise? She smiled faintly. Therapy and pain. They're good teachers. By March, the farmhouse was alive again. The plumbing worked, the kitchen was patched together, and the rooms upstairs smelled faintly of paint and sawdust. For the first time in months, laughter filled the walls. On Saturdays, they worked to music, old songs from Daniel's phone. Lila sang softly while sanding a table. June took notes for expenses. Emma painted small hearts on the wall when no one was watching. One afternoon, Lila looked out over the weed-choked backyard. "You know what this place needs?" Daniel wiped sweat from his forehead. "A miracle? A garden," she said. "Tomatoes, herbs, maybe strawberries. I studied soil in college. It's therapy." Emma's eyes lit up. "Can we grow strawberries?" "Absolutely." They spent the day pulling weeds and turning the earth. Lila explained how soil breathes. June drew little planting maps. Emma held up a worm proudly. "Lila says worms make the dirt better." Daniel smiled. "She's right. Worms are helpers." Lila looked up. "Everything's useful if you put it in the right place. People too." That night, tired and dirty, they ate pizza on the porch. June raised her slice. "To second chances," Lila grinned. "And old houses that don't give up." Emma lifted her juice box seriously. "And strawberries." Daniel laughed, something warm stirring inside him for the first time in a long time. It wasn't exactly happiness, but it was close. Something like peace. If this tone and flow feels right to you now, no headings, full cinematic emotion. I'll continue. Part 3. In the exact same style, the growth of Daniel's new business. The deepening family bond and the quiet beginning of love between him and June. By spring, the house had a heartbeat. The walls that once echoed only with wind now carried laughter, footsteps, the soft hum of life returning. Daniel sometimes caught himself standing in the doorway, watching it all in disbelief. June worked at the small diner in town a few days a week, saving what little she earned. Lila kept the garden alive, her hands always streaked with dirt. Daniel took small repair jobs in the nearby town, fixing roofs, wiring barns, whatever people would pay for. Every evening he came home to the sound of Emma's voice. She'd be telling Lila about her day or sitting on the floor drawing pictures of the house. One night, Emma was waiting at the table when he came in, her face serious. "Daddy, can we stay here forever?" He hung up his jacket. "That's the plan. What if it breaks again?" "The house?" "No," she said softly. "Everything." Daniel knelt beside her. "Then we fix it again." She smiled a little. "Like you fixed the roof." Exactly like that. When she ran off to show June a drawing, Daniel stayed crouched there, realizing how much truth was in those words. Everything could be fixed, just slower, rougher, never perfect. As the weeks passed, he noticed how June had become part of their rhythm without him even trying to make space for her. She handled meals, bills, Emma's homework. When he came home late, she'd leave food warming on the stove. One afternoon, he found her on the porch with a sketchbook in her lap. "You draw?" he asked. "Not really," she said. "Just doodling ideas. I was thinking, maybe we could open a small shop here someday. Sell produce, maybe handmade stuff. You've got skills, Lila's garden is magic, Emma could be our mascot." Daniel smiled. "You planning to turn my farmhouse into a market?" "Why not? It already feels like one big project." He laughed. "We'll call it Miller and Hayes Goods. Half the name's already painted somewhere in this house." She smiled but said quietly, "We'll see." Later that night, Lila came in from the garden covered in dirt.
"June says you two are going to start a store. June plans faster than I do," Daniel said. Lila laughed.
She always does. That night the air felt lighter. They ate together by candlelight when the power went out, passing jokes and stories like family. A month later, Daniel got his first real contract again, an old barn needing restoration. He stood in the yard holding the signed paper, feeling something like pride for the first time in years. June came outside, wiping her hands on a towel. "Good news?" He held up the contract. "A full job. Might even get a deposit by next week," she smiled. "You deserve that. Couldn't have done half this without you all." "Maybe not. But you're the reason it feels safe here." Daniel hesitated. "You ever think about leaving?" "Sometimes," she said honestly. "But every time I do, Emma runs in and tells me she loves me. It makes it hard to pack," he smiled. "She loves big." "So do you," she said quietly, and for a moment neither of them looked away. That night, Lila teased her sister when Daniel wasn't around. "You like him?" June rolled her eyes. "He's been through enough." "I'm not adding more confusion." Who said anything about confusion? You both look less broken when you talk. June said nothing, but she didn't deny it. As the summer rolled in, the garden flourished. Tomato vines curled along wooden stakes. The smell of basil filled the air. Emma spent hours out there, her hands as dirty as Lila's. Daniel built a small shed beside it, hammering quietly while June read on the porch steps. One afternoon, rain came fast and hard. They ran inside laughing, soaked to the bone. June handed Emma a towel and Daniel stood dripping by the door. Guess the shed's waterproof, he said, pushing his wet hair back. June handed him a towel too. You'll catch cold, he smirked. You sound like my wife used to. For a second she froze, then smiled softly. I'll take that as a compliment. After Emma went to bed, the storm kept pounding. Daniel and June sat by the fire, the glow soft against the walls. Neither spoke for a long time. She'd like you, you know, Daniel said quietly. Melissa? He nodded. You remind me of her in some ways. Not the same, but she had that same way of fixing things without realizing it. June looked into the fire. I don't fix people, Daniel. I just try not to make them worse. He smiled faintly. That's more than most. The silence stretched, warm and fragile. When she finally looked at him, there was understanding. Not romance, not yet, just the beginning of trust. Weeks turned to months. The barn job went well. Word spread about Daniel's work. Calls started coming in again. Life was steady. Then one evening, Emma ran in holding a letter. Daddy, this came for you. He took it, frowning at the seal. It was from the bank. His hands trembled slightly as he opened it, June noticed. Everything okay? He exhaled. The final payment cleared. The house, it's officially ours. June's eyes widened. You mean no more mortgage? He nodded slowly. No more mortgage. Emma jumped into his arms. We really get to stay forever? He hugged her tight. Yeah, baby. We really do. Lila came in from outside, wiping dirt off her hands. What's all the noise? Daniel laughed. We own it, she blinked. We? You mean you? No, he said. We. None of this would have happened without you three. They all stood there for a moment. Quiet, but full of something that didn't need words. Later that night, June stood outside under the stars, arms wrapped around herself. Daniel stepped beside her. You did this, he said. No, she said. We all did. He looked at her for a long moment. You ever think about starting over? For real this time? I think maybe we already have, he smiled. The night was cool and full of crickets. The farmhouse glowed behind them, alive again. Emma's laughter echoed faintly through the window. Daniel reached for June's hand, hesitated, then let it rest near hers. Not a promise, not yet. Just something real, fragile, and finally beginning. By autumn, the house looked nothing like the place Daniel had first found. The porch no longer sagged. The paint shone faintly in the morning light. The garden had gone wild in the best way. Tomatoes spilling from baskets, herbs hanging from the beams, pumpkins lined up like trophies along the fence. Daniel had started taking on more clients. A historic renovation downtown had turned into steady work. People started calling him the guy who brings old places back to life, and he didn't argue. Lila managed most of the home repairs now. She'd learned fast, her confidence growing with every task. She talked about maybe taking classes again, finishing the degree she'd put on hold. June's catering side business had quietly bloomed. It started with extra baked bread for the neighbors, then grew into orders for birthdays and small gatherings. She called it Wild Hearth Kitchen. The name came to her one evening while they were sitting by the fire. Because that's what this is, she'd said. A wild hearth, built from what's left. By winter, she was delivering meals to half the town. Life was steady, almost peaceful. And then quietly, something began to shift between Daniel and June. It wasn't dramatic. It was in the pauses, the way her hand brushed his when they reached for the same mug, the way he'd find her looking at him when she thought he didn't notice, the way Emma crawled into her lap as if it were the most natural thing in the world. One night, they sat by the fire after Emma had gone to bed. Lila was upstairs sketching garden layouts for next year. June was staring into the flames, her hair lit gold by the firelight. Do you ever think about what comes next? She asked. Daniel glanced at her. Next? Yeah, you've rebuilt the house. The business is steady. Emma's thriving. Do you ever think about what you want for yourself? He smiled faintly. This, I guess, quiet work, her laughter in the morning. That's all? That's enough, June's voice softened. You deserve more than enough. He didn't answer. The fire cracked between them, filling the silence with its steady rhythm. Days later, he found her baking bread late at night, flour dusting her cheek. The air smelled like rosemary and butter. Couldn't sleep? He asked. Too much noise in my head, she said. It helps to bake. He leaned against the counter, watching her knead the dough. You're good at it. It's the one thing I can control, she said quietly. When I bake, it's simple. Ingredients, timing, heat. Life doesn't usually work that way. He smiled. Sometimes it does. She looked at him, something unspoken in her eyes. You really think people get second chances? He nodded slowly. If they're brave enough to take them. June took a breath. Daniel, there's something I should say. He waited. I care about you, more than I probably should. I don't want to ruin what we've built here, but I needed you to know. He stepped closer, heart pounding. You're not ruining anything. Her voice trembled. Then what are we doing? He smiled faintly. Maybe we're just fixing what's left. Together. For a long time, neither moved. The firelight flickered against the walls. Outside, the wind pressed softly against the windows. Then she reached for his hand. It was a small gesture, but it felt like a door opening. The next morning, everything looked the same, but felt different. They didn't talk about it. They didn't have to. When he handed her coffee, his fingers brushed hers again. She smiled. That was enough. Weeks passed. Emma noticed first. Daddy, she said one morning, you smile more now. Do I? He asked. Yeah, you and June laugh like Lila and me when we make pancakes. He tried to hide a smile. That's a good thing, right? Emma nodded. It's the best thing. By spring, Daniel and June had quietly become a couple, if not in words, then in everything else that mattered. They worked together, cooked together, raised Emma together. There was still grief, still moments when memories of Melissa hit hard, but they didn't hurt the same way. The pain had softened, folded itself into something gentle and bearable. One Saturday, Daniel drove them into town to look at a property for June's catering business, a small brick storefront near the cafe where she'd worked before. Dusty, old, but full of light. What do you think? He asked. June looked around, eyes shining. I think it could be perfect. Emma spun in circles in the middle of the floor. Can we paint it blue? June laughed. We can paint it any color you want. They signed the lease a week later. The first night June cooked there, Daniel stayed late helping her move supplies. She stood by the counter, surrounded by trays of bread and herbs, her hair tied back, eyes bright. Feels strange, she said, owning something again. You earned it, he said. Every inch. She looked at him, her voice soft. So did you. He hesitated, then kissed her. It wasn't planned, it just happened, simple, quiet, real. When they finally broke apart, June whispered, I didn't think I'd ever feel this again. He smiled. Me neither. That night when he got home, Emma was already asleep. Lila was on the porch smiling when she saw him. So, she said, it finally happened. He tried to play dumb. What happened? Come on, she said, laughing. June's been glowing for days. Daniel chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. It's new. It's right, she said. You both deserve that. He sat beside her, and for a long time they just listened to the crickets and the faint hum of the night. The next morning, June showed up early, sunlight in her hair and coffee in both hands. Emma ran out to meet her, hugging her waist. You came back. June laughed. Of course I did. Where else would I go? Daniel stood in the doorway watching them. He thought about everything that had led to this moment. The foreclosure, the fear, the smoke from the chimney that first night, and realized something simple and true. Winter came quietly that year. The first snow dusted the farmhouse roof like sugar, settling over the fields and fences. Daniel stood at the window one morning, watching Emma chase flakes in her mittens, while June called for her to put on her hat. He smiled. There were mornings when he still woke expecting the old weight, the fear, the loss, the feeling that everything could vanish again. But then Emma's laughter would fill the house, and June's voice would call from the kitchen, and the weight would fade. They'd built something new, something fragile but real. June's catering shop had taken off faster than either of them expected. She was now cooking for events across the county, with her name quietly spreading as someone who made food that feels like home. Daniel's business was thriving too. He'd even hired 2 workers to help on bigger projects. Lila managed most of the garden and occasionally helped with design jobs, talking about turning their land into a small teaching space for kids. Emma was in 1st grade now, endlessly curious, endlessly alive. She'd draw pictures of the house with all of them inside, Daniel, June, Lila herself, and label it My Family. One evening in early December, the 4 of them sat around the fire, the same fireplace where everything had started. The wood popped softly as the wind howled outside. Emma was curled up in June's lap, half asleep. Lila was reading a book by the firelight. Daniel sat back, watching them. He thought about that first night, the smoke from the chimney, the fear, the uncertainty, how one decision had changed everything. "Do you ever think about that night?" June asked quietly, almost as if she'd read his thoughts. "All the time," Daniel said. "If I'd called the police, none of this would exist." "Maybe," she said, "or maybe something else would have brought us together. I like to think the world has a way of fixing what it breaks." He smiled. "You sound like Lila." Lila looked up. "That's my line," she said with a grin. "And I stand by it," Emma stirred. "What are you talking about?" "Nothing, sweetheart," June whispered, kissing the top of her head. "Just how lucky we are." Emma mumbled sleepily. "We're lucky 'cause we found each other." Daniel's chest tightened. He met June's eyes. She smiled softly, eyes glistening. Weeks later, near Christmas, Daniel surprised them all. He'd been quiet for days, sneaking out early, coming home late. One evening, he called everyone to the front yard. Snow fell in lazy flakes. The porch lights glowed warm against the cold night. "What's going on?" June asked, wrapping her scarf tighter. Daniel pointed to the old mailbox by the road. Fresh paint gleamed on the metal, the letters carefully stenciled in white. It didn't say Hayes anymore. It read, "The Miller Hayes Home." For a moment, no one spoke. Then June covered her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. Lila laughed through her own tears. Emma ran forward, shouting, "It's all our names!" Daniel turned to June. "This was never just mine. It became ours a long time ago." She threw her arms around him. "I don't even have words," she whispered. "Then don't," he said. "Just stay." She nodded against his chest. "Always." A year later, they married in town. Small ceremony, simple vows. Emma throwing flower petals with more enthusiasm than aim. Lila stood beside her sister, beaming, and afterward said, "Took you 2 long enough." They built their life in slow, steady layers. Mornings started with coffee and laughter. Afternoons with work, evenings with stories by the fire. Some days were hard. Old memories still hurt. But there was a peace in knowing they'd earned every inch of this new beginning. On the anniversary of the day Daniel bought the house, they all drove back to see it. The windows were boarded, grass grown high, the walls weathered again. But it still stood strong. "Should we sell it?" June asked. Daniel looked at the old porch, the empty doorway. "Not yet," he said. "Maybe someone else will need it one day." Emma held his hand, staring at the house. "That's where we became a family, right?" "Yeah," he said quietly. "That's where everything started." They stood there in the cold, the 4 of them together, the wind brushing through the tall grass. Daniel thought about everything that had led here, the heartbreak, the risk, the decision not to give up. And he realized that sometimes the best things in life aren't the ones you build from plans, but the ones that find you when you're broken enough to let them in. As they turned to leave, the sun broke through the clouds, spilling gold light across the roof. Daniel looked back one last time and whispered to himself, "Thank you." He didn't know if he was thanking fate, the farmhouse, or the ghosts of their old lives, maybe all of them, because some homes aren't just built with wood and nails. They're built with forgiveness, courage, and the choice to keep opening the door, again and again, no matter how many times life burns it down. And that was exactly what they'd done.